The arrests happened decisively, in the early hours when most people were either asleep or just beginning to stare. Across parts of Edo North, security forces moved with a clear objective: flush out kidnappers, disrupt drug peddling networks, and restore calm to communities that have lived too long with fear hanging in the air. By the end of the operation, 8 suspected kidnappers and illicit drug dealers were in custody, weapons were recovered, and a strong message had been sent. This was Operation IGBO DANU 1. And for residents of Osara, Auchi, and Okpella communities in Edo State, it felt like a long-awaited response. On February 4, 2026, troops of the 4th Brigade of the Nigerian Army, Benin City, rolled out in a coordinated security operation alongside the Edo State Police Command, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, and operatives of the State Security Service, SSS. The mission was clear and urgent: neutralize and flush out terrorists and kidnappers, dismantle criminal hideouts, and rescue potential victims across flashpoints in Etstako West local government area and surrounding communities in Edo North Senatorial District.
Now, at this point, let us pause and think. How many families in these areas go to bed each night wondering if their loved ones will return safely the next day? How many traders, farmers, and commuters have altered their routes, schedules, or dreams because of fear? Security intelligence had pointed to Osara community, as well as parts of Auchi and Okpella, as areas where suspicious movements, kidnapping plots, and drug activities were being coordinated. The information wasn't vague, it was detailed, and it demanded swift action. As security vehicles moved toward the targeted communities, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. The roads leading into Osara are narrow in places, flanked by thick vegetation and scattered settlements. This is the kind of terrain criminals exploit: easy to disappear, easy to monitor movement, difficult to police without coordination. Troops dismounted quietly. Police units took positions, civil defense operatives secured entry and exit points. ESSC operatives walked behind the scenes, guiding movements with intelligence. There were no dramatic sirens, no warning shots, just calculated steps and silent communication. From this point, we need to understand something important. Operations like this depend heavily on teamwork. One wrong move can tip suspects off, one delay can allow escape, and one mistake can cost lives. Then, contact was made.
By the end of the operation, 8 suspects had been apprehended. Their names were released as Jamilu Mohammed, Kasim Abu, Braimo Afiz, Suleiman Hamisu, Lawan Umaru, Bawa Awal, Musa Umaru, and Amodu Atai. These were not random arrests. During the operation, security forces recovered items that painted a troubling picture of organized criminal activity. Among the recovered items were 1 English-made automatic pump-action gun, 4 live cartridges, and 1 locally fabricated pistol. But the weapons were only part of the story. Also recovered were a point-of-sale machine, 2 cutlasses, a Nikon digital camera, 2 Android phones, a metal hook, 5 bottles of codeine syrup, and 2 Indian hemp weighing scales. However, the quantities of substances suspected to be cannabis sativa, tramadol, ice, loud, and kolos, and a sum of 87,550 naira in cash. Now, let us look at this clearly. Why would suspected kidnappers have a POS machine? Why the weighing scales? Why the combination of hard drugs, weapons, and cash? The answers point to a criminal ecosystem: kidnapping to fund drug operations, drugs to sustain criminal networks, and weapons to protect both. This wasn't just about abducting people, it was about profit, control, and intimidation.
For residents of Osara, Auchi, and Okpella, the days leading up to the operation had been heavy with anxiety. People spoke in hushed tones. Parents warned children not to stay out late. Drivers avoided certain roads after dusk. Some families slept with phones fully charged, just in case. When news began to spread that security forces had made arrests, reactions were mixed: disbelief, relief, cautious optimism. One resident of Auchi, who asked not to be named, described the feeling simply: "At least tonight we can breathe small." Another community member in Okpella said the presence of security operatives during the operation alone was reassuring. Just seeing them move together like that, you know something serious is happening. But there was also anger. Anger that such activities had been happening close to home. Anger that drugs and weapons had found their way into familiar spaces. And there was fear too. Fear of reprisals. Fear of what might still be hidden. Let's look at the official confirmation and next steps. The details of the operation were confirmed by Captain Kennedy Anyanwu, the Assistant Director of Army Public Relations for the 4th Brigade. In a statement made available to journalists in Benin City, he explained that Operation IGBO DANU 1 was specifically designed to flush out terrorists and kidnappers and restore safety to affected communities. Captain Anyanwu added that all suspects and recovered items have been handed over to the Edo State Police Command for further investigation. This handover matters. It signals continuity, from military action to police investigation to possible prosecution. It also sends a message that arrests are not just for headlines, but part of a legal process aimed at long-term deterrence. Now, the question many residents are asking is simple. Will justice follow swiftly? Will investigations uncover wider networks? And will this mark the beginning of sustained security presence? However, the leadership on the ground points to a firm warning. The operation was personally led by the commander of 4th Brigade, Brigadier General Ahmed Balogun, a move that underscored the seriousness of the mission. After the operation, Brigadier General Balogun commended the swift response and strong collaboration among all the security agencies involved. According to him, the success of the operation was proof that joint efforts work. But his message went further. He issued a clear warning that Edo State will be untenable for terrorists, kidnappers, and other criminal elements. This was not just rhetoric, it was a statement of intent. Balogun also reaffirmed the brigade's commitment to safeguarding lives and property across the state. He expressed appreciation to the General Officer commanding 2 Division Nigerian Army, Major General Chinedu Nebefi, for his strategic guidance and support, highlighting that operations like these are backed by broader military planning.
Another angle to this issue: drugs, youth, and crime. But here's where the story gets deeper. Beyond kidnapping, the recovery of drugs like codeine, tramadol, cannabis, and ice points to a troubling social problem: the intersection of drug abuse and violent crime. From this point, we need to understand that kidnapping does not exist in isolation. It often feeds off drug addiction, unemployment, peer pressure, and broken social structures. When young men find themselves trapped between survival and desperation, criminal networks exploit that vulnerability. So the question becomes, how do communities prevent young people from being drawn into this cycle? What role do families, religious leaders, schools, and local authorities play? Security operations can disrupt crime, but prevention requires community action. One unspoken but critical element of this operation was local cooperation. Operations like IGBO DANU 1 do not succeed without information. Someone noticed unusual activity. Someone spoke up. Someone trusted security agencies enough to share what they knew. And that courage matters. Now let us ask ourselves honestly. If you notice suspicious movement in your area, would you report it? If a neighbor suddenly acquired unexplained wealth, would you ask questions? If strangers began operating quietly among you, would you stay silent? Silence protects criminals. Cooperation protects communities.
As the dust settles, security presence has been increased in parts of Edo North. Patrols continue, surveillance remains active, and investigations are ongoing. But residents are being reminded to remain vigilant, not fearful, but alert. Avoid isolated routes at odd hours. Report suspicious behavior promptly. Do not glorify crime or shield criminals because of familiarity or fear. Let's pause and think again. Safety is not just the absence of crime, it is the presence of trust, awareness, and shared responsibility. Operation IGBO DANU 1 was not just about 8 arrests. It was about reclaiming space, physical space, emotional space, and psychological space. For too long, criminals have tried to dictate how people live, move, and think. This operation reminded everyone that the state is watching, listening, and responding. But the story does not end here. The bigger lesson is this: security is strongest when communities and agencies work together. No uniform alone can defeat crime. No community alone can protect itself. So as Edo State moves forward, the questions remain open, and they are for all of us to answer. Will we stay alert after the headlines fade? Will we protect one another with information and cooperation? Will we choose courage over silence? Because when communities speak and security listens, hope has a fighting chance.